New Zealand may not have its own War of the Worlds or Hitler diaries, but we have had some world-class hoaxes to call our own. Tonight, we look back at some of the greatest and weirdest hoaxes on record, and meet a man responsible for a staggering amount of highly believable bullshit. In 1939, when Orson Welles announced on the radio that aliens were landing, America shat its pants. 50 years later, when a similar prank was played out by radio students in Christchurch, you'd think no one could possibly fall for the same gag. But they did. This time, the hoax featured a direct message from the extraterrestrials.
Greetings, Earthling. The path to an ancient future lies just ahead of you. Don't be afraid. We come in peace.
The students broadcast this message for an entire weekend, freaking out unsuspecting listeners.
We are on our way to here.
And while no one was taken in by the accompanying aliens/skinheads routine, dozens of people were so concerned by the broadcasts that they called the police.
The strangest call we had was one particular man who listened to this radio station for 10 hours before he decided to ring the police.
We are on our way to here.
Some thought a UFO had crashed, but this April Fool's hoax turned out to be a plug for Radio Hauraki. But not all hoaxes are so harmless.
He received a letter. It seemed real enough.
Sometimes they're as much fun as contracting AIDS.
The letter says that your name's been submitted as a possible contact with an AIDS patient. Then it provides a phone number. But the number provided belongs to Dial a Prayer.
The fear of the Lord prolongeth days.
Or how about foot and mouth?
Police believe the letter sent to the Prime Minister is most likely a hoax.
Sometimes hoaxes are just plain retarded. Like the time National MP John Carter rang John Banks' talkback show and pretended to be a dole-bludging Maori.
And I reckon there's nothing wrong with a BB.
But sometimes the politicians are on the other end of the hoax.
Ohario is the latest place the hoax letters are surfacing.
The letters in question appeared to be from the office of then Housing and Moustache Minister, Phil Goff.
The letter says a Tongan family will be coming to stay over the next few months. It tells recipients where they can hire tents and stretchers to accommodate an extra 10 people, and says some food will also be provided. It even suggests hiring a minibus to meet the family when they arrive at the airport.
Have you had any problems getting the birds accustomed to wearing gumboots?
The classic turkeys in gumboots. This is possibly our first televised hoax. Often attributed to Country Calendar, it actually appeared on the regional show Town and Around in 1969. The skit, which fooled thousands, continues the proud tradition of farmers fucking with gullible townies.
Yes, we have struck a few problems.
It was an early salvo in the war against normality.
Well, hoaxes should be funny. They should delight us. They should surprise us. And it should make people think.
Burton Silver is our most prolific and ingenious hoaxer. He's been pulling the wool over our eyes for decades. Most famously in a series of hoaxes on Country Calendar.
The thing is that there were beginning to be many, many more people in the city than there were in the country. So people in the city actually weren't quite sure what the people in the country were doing, and that inventions and things that were starting to happen in the country could be real. So it was a fertile ground for moving in, and we used conventions that existed. I mean, you could pluck a fence and play it and make a sound.
Or how about the campy hairdressers turned farmers, who treated sheep like customers in an upmarket salon?
You see, their hair becomes coarse and it lacks, well, colour and lustre.
Then there was the so-called supergrass that led to the introduction of night farming.
So far, growth rates on the supergrass have been excellent.
Sometimes the hoaxes were signposted, but sometimes they seemed incredibly real.
A sheepdog is only as good as its master. Until now, that is. Modern science is on the threshold of making the trained working dog as defunct as the dodo. Dr. Ross Duncan has made a breakthrough in controlled animal behaviour.
Of all of Silver's country calendar hoaxes, the radio-controlled sheepdog is considered the absolute classic.
Fleet has had 74 very small, multifunctional electrodes implanted into his motor cortex here.
Forward, drop. Forward, drop. The equipment is light and easy to fit on the dog. The only drawback is the aerial. It could hinder the dog's jump and twist through fences.
We had people who wrote in, for example, when we did the radio-controlled dog, there were people who were horrified that we would do this rightly to a dog, and there were people who wrote in asking for the contraption to put on their dogs so that they would do it, you know, so that they could get their Pekingese to round up cattle or whatever, should they want to, yeah.
Silver's what they call an ideas man, a prolific cartoonist. Remember the Bogle strip in The Listener? Then there's his brilliant publishing hoaxes, beginning with the faux naughty Victorian handbook, before he really hit hoax pay dirt with the million-seller Why Cats Paint.
In America, the paintings are on show in a San Francisco gallery at prices up to $50,000.
Kind of communicating feelings in a very beautiful way.
Most newspapers played along with the hoax, even though they knew it was a hoax. They played along with it because to do so they could sell a lot more papers.
The media also played along with what was possibly the greatest ever hoax pulled on the New Zealand public ever. To thousands of Kiwis, Forgotten Silver was a documentary about Colin Mackenzie, our own film pioneer, inventor of colour film and the bicycle-powered camera. It even proved that Pierce flew before the Wright brothers.
He didn't have a lot of impact to me until this great discovery of all of his films.
All beautifully orchestrated bullshit.
Maybe we're a little naughty.
The hoax was the brainchild of Peter Jackson and Costa Botes. And despite being littered with outrageous clues, not everyone spotted the hoax.
No, I didn't.
No, it seemed straightforward, I thought.
But are New Zealanders currently being subjected to a different kind of hoax? The show Sensing Murder purports to help solve unsolved murders using psychic detectives who garner clues by making contact with the spirit world. The star of the show is an Australian by the name of Deb Webber, a woman so convincing that celebrity clinical psychologist Nigel Latta stopped calling himself a skeptic and became a believer. But footage obtained by EML seems to tell another story and casts serious doubt on the credibility of Deb Webber and on Sensing Murder itself.
Do you want to go in the car? I don't want to go in the car. Refusing, she's fighting going in this vehicle.
With its use of fast cutting, intense sound effects, multiple psychics, and over-the-top recreations, Sensing Murder has become a hit on New Zealand TV. This season, the introduction of a so-called skeptic-turned-believer lent credibility to the show.
For the first time, the Sensing Murder filming process is laid bare as we invite a die-hard skeptic and professional clinical psychologist to scrutinise a psychic reading.
I can't find a way to rationally explain what I saw today.
But actual skeptics and other psychologists have labelled Nigel Latta naive, his investigation of Sensing Murder unscientific.
Like someone setting out to denounce Nigerian bank scams, he ends up writing out a cheque instead.
Nigel is an eminent person in his area. He's very well known. He's very good at what he does. But I guess that if I took him along to a really decent magic show, that he'd say many of the same sorts of things.
Now, she keeps showing me M-A-R, and that is the stroke. I don't know if it's a T or a...
If I brought Deb Webber into my laboratory, which I'm pretty sure she wouldn't agree to, and was allowed to control everything going on, I'm pretty certain that we would not have seen what happened on Sensing Murder.
Let me help you.
Sensing that Deb Webber wouldn't agree to such a test, The EML research department Googled the self-proclaimed psychic detective and found she'd already been tested several years ago by an Australian current affairs show. And it seems she can talk to dead people, even if they never existed.
To test Deb's claims, we sent 3 people to see her. The first, psychologist Michelle Smith, who isn't married, but said she had a dead husband.
Okay. He says it's not as simple as he thought it would be, Deb.
Caught on hidden camera, Deb spoke to Michelle's husband on 2 different occasions.
Never had a husband. She saw 2 large dogs in a large house and property. I have none of those things. The list just went on. None of it was right.
But clearly, weren't you lying to those people? I mean, these people that you contacted didn't exist.
Well, no, not at the time. I wasn't lying. They might have existed, but maybe not in their life. To me, it's not a lie because that's what I'm getting.
It's possible that she genuinely believes that she can talk to dead people, but I can guarantee that they're not talking back.
Then there were 2 others. Joshua invented a dead daughter.
She said, "Hi, Dad." She talks to you. She actually walks around hitting you.
And here Talia is looking for a dead sister she doesn't have, but Deb manages to find.
Oh, Bill, there. That's really strong. That's her leg. Can you do that?
If you were clairvoyant, wouldn't you know that these people didn't have a dead husband, didn't have a dead sister, didn't have a dead brother?
Oh, I only know what I get told.
But isn't that a convenient excuse?
No, it's the actual truth. It's the 100% truth. I can only say what I'm getting, and I can't explain everything, because I really can't.
You've got to have no conscience to be able to do that, I think, because you're taking advantage of people who are very stressed. They're bereaved, particularly, and in an emotional state, and it's very unfair to take advantage of people.
I help more people than harm people. And I don't want to harm anyone.
And you deny that in any way you're a fraud?
Absolutely, 100%.
Still to come, the EML sealed section.